Okay, so as promised, here is some history on the property out at the Smith family farm. We're going to go through the history of the property. This is pre-Smith family farm. The Smith family wasn't even a thing at this point. So we're going to go through the property history, and then we're going to go through the family history later on. So here is a grid of the property from a geological website. You guys are free to go find this if you want to check this out for yourselves. Everything you're being told here is accurate. So the yellow spots to directly in almost in the center where you can see the road off of it, that was our driveway, and that yellow goes all the way back to the house. Over here on the right is an entrance to what is called a Mississippian culture. And if you're not familiar with what a Mississippian culture is, it's Native American sites. So they found visible trenches when they were doing excavation and trying to find out if this was indeed a Mississippian culture, and they have found all the telltale signs of it. Mounds, structures, and mounds would actually be where burial sites were for the Native Americans back then. So there's plenty of anomalies, and there's also another farm, an Ellingsworth farm, where they found some where it kind of, this property is attached, and so it kind of stretched from one to the other, but the Smith family farm is much bigger than the Ellingsworth property as far as. Okay, and so if you all have paid any attention to any of the other videos, if you haven't seen them, go watch them. But this cornfield that we're walking through now is actually next to the driveway, the picture where I just showed you the diagram of where their culture entrance was. This arrow right here is where their culture, Mississippian culture, the Native American ground entrance would have been. And that is off to the right of the side of where our driveway was, which is where that cornfield is, where you have seen me walking through it. And this is the bigger picture. That arrow that you were just looking at is the same one off the side there to the right, where you see the white squared in image. That's where there was walls there, and there was an entrance that went in there to the Native American village. And again, to the left was our original driveway. But all these squares that you see in there are sites of structures and mounds. There was also, and this right here shows the timeline of the dirt and all the stuff that they checked when they went out there to make sure that it was what they were looking at. And these things you see, these circles and squares, again, these are sites of structures and anomalies where possible building sites, burial sites. They also found a lot of burned soil, which would be indicative of burials and basically fires to stay alive and stay warm. The radiocarbon dates. The radiocarbon dates is very interesting because the things in this on this property were actually dated, and the radiocarbon dates to the pottery and stuff that they found out there started from 1000 AD and ran up to 1650. So it was about a 650 year run. And actually the Smith Sutton property the Smith Sutton property actually ran until about probably like the 1700s, early 1800s, which would correlate to when we know that the Smith family moved out there. And incidentally, I'm going to assume the changeover on the property wasn't a very kind one, because after the Smith family moved in there, had children, one of their sons went out to check on the animals, and he was scalped and killed by one of the Native Americans that were still living out there around that property. So I'm sure the loss of their property was, for the Native Americans, was not a kind one. And so that takes us up to when the Smith family would have moved in there around the 1800s, and probably around the mid 1800s. And I'm going to get y'all some pictures of this house back when it was in its like original form. We're going to dig up as much information as we possibly can about it. But just know these are things that I actually didn't even know myself until I started to do this research and stuff on it. But it's this property where I grew up in for 20 years was actually sitting on Mississippian culture land. It was Native American land. And so knowing that, and knowing that there was Native American burial ground there, it makes me realize the things that I knew about the family. And I did already know that the one of the sons had been killed by a Native American. I did not know, though, that it was an entire culture that was there. That was, I'm sure, taken from them. So it makes a lot of sense into what the activity in the house was the entire time we were growing up, and why it has always been so bad and so thick and so deep. The activity was constant, and so almost to the point where you feel like you were kind of losing your mind. Like, is what you're actually seeing really real? But yeah, so that all that makes a lot more sense. And so now we're going up to and we'll talk some more about that, the Mississippian culture as we go through this, but that kind of brings us up to when the Smith family moved in there. So that is what we're going to get into next, and I am going to get you some pictures to show you the house that they would have been living in.